Today I wanted to go over what I personally believe is some of the best guns to get into. This is a Ruger 10/22. It's a 22 long rifle, and I believe a 22 long rifle is one of the best guns to start getting into guns with. Now, would I recommend the Ruger 10/22 as the first one? I personally wouldn't, mainly because it's semi-automatic, and I think that a bolt action or a single shot is best when starting out for the younger kids. But if you're an adult, the Ruger 10/22 is a great option because it is a nice and reliable gun. You can use it as a good tool to teach gun control, safety, and everything with it, while also being able to teach accuracy and how to properly shoot a gun. Now, when I started out when I was younger, I was given a Marlin bolt action 22 long rifle, no scope, just iron sights. I think that it should be started on iron sights because it teaches the basics and also teaches you how to shoot a gun without the benefit of having any kind of sight on it. That being said, that if you don't know that you actually want to get into it, there are cheaper options. Like there's some Savages that run as low as $120. You can get the Cricket, which is a child-sized gun that is a single shot that is very good to teach on. Now this is also a good gun for small game hunting, so if you want to take someone out that you want to teach how to hunt or just get them into learning how the accuracy and everything works, it's great. But if you wanted to get into hunting more than teaching them accuracy and everything, I actually started out with a single shot 410. Now earlier I did say I started out with a Marlin when I was younger. Those were the two guns that I was basically given the range on being able to use. I was never able to use them by myself, of course, but as you can see, this one has seen better days. The trigger guard's broken off. The buttstock had broke at one point. But it's more of doesn't get used anymore. It's a memory piece more than anything. Now, if I need to, I still will use it. It's just not something I go for, especially ammo is hard to find for a 410 now. If you were going to go the shotgun route to teach someone how to shoot, a pump works great. I still would stay away from a semi-automatic because I don't believe semi-automatic should be a first firearm because they can cause issues. Accidents happen with even single shots. It's more likely with a semi-automatic. Or the 410 has, in my opinion, the 410 is not as relevant as it used to be. I really love the caliber or the gauge, if you want to call it that, and I really love the round itself, but to me, in my area, there's very few small gun shops that actually carry 410 anymore, and the 28 gauge has seemed to largely have replaced the 410. So if you're considering a shotgun, the 28 gauge probably be a good option. If you're older and you want to go hunting for a little bit larger stuff, there's the 16 gauge, 20 gauge, and 12 gauge. 12 gauge is personally my favorite, but it is also a pretty strong round that hits pretty hard and also kicks pretty hard. So if you want something that's smaller, easier to work with to learn how it works, it's a smaller 410 style shotgun shell. 20 gauge is a kind of middle ground for all of it. It's a little less powerful, has a little more than the 28 gauge, probably a decent amount more, but 12 gauge is the perfect shotgun cartridge in my opinion if you're actually going to go hunting for small game, deer, and other things that you may want to. The 16 gauge is nice, but it is also kind of hard to find like the 410 in that similarity. They make all kinds of youth models for stuff like this. Like as you can see, this is the Topper Junior from H&R. I want to say they probably don't make this model anymore. This is I've had it for over 20 years now, so I don't exactly know how old this gun is, but any of those options are good options. Now, I do a lot of AR-15 stuff. I love my AR-15s. I would not recommend an AR-15 as a first firearm. They're nice because they're adjustable and they can fit you better, but as I said earlier, I don't believe that most semi-automatics should be a first firearm. Now, if you were to buy say a bolt converted AR, may work, but at the same time, it's also nice to learn on what everything originally came from rather than learn from the newest and nicest of guns, in my opinion. To recap, my favorite gun to start with as a shooter to learn how a gun works, the accuracy and everything else, is either a single shot or bolt action 22 long rifle. The best shotgun to start with, in my opinion, is a pump or single shot 28 gauge or 20 gauge. If you're older, change that to a 12 gauge. Reasons being behind these two conclusions is the 22 long rifle can teach you accuracy and can reach up to roughly about 75 to 100 yards depending on how good you get with telling how much it's going to drop. The 410 or 28 gauge is nice because it'll teach you how to shoot a gun and how to handle the recoil and everything without worrying about accuracy. They are relatively, the 410 doesn't fit in this category because of, like I said, it's become largely irrelevant compared to the other shells now, but the 22 long rifle is extremely cheap to shoot compared to other calibers. The 410 is not. The 28 gauge is relatively cheap. The 12 gauge is still even relatively cheap if you're getting only birdshot. Once you get into buckshot, slugs, and stuff like that, it changes, but for just learning how to shoot and having fun and getting into it, they're all great options. The reason I didn't say other calibers and guns like a 223 or similar cartridges that don't kick much but can produce better ballistics is because when you're getting into guns, you got to learn how they work and how to be safe with them rather than trying to be the best realistically, because in all things said and done, one of the biggest problems that a lot of people have is going to be ammo and the cost of ammo, and especially if you're looking on a budget, 22 long rifle is roughly about a quarter to half the price of any standard like big rifle round. For example, the 22 long rifle, I have a box of roughly 800 rounds, which it should be 800 rounds, but I'm not going to count them all. It costs $45. These are factory second rounds, which is just usually means that they got scratches and blemishes on them that they don't want to sell to people that are going to be expecting perfect rounds. This is not the exact box, but in the same time, you can buy 12 gauges in boxes like this for roughly about $10 for not these specific rounds because these are for small game hunting, but if you get target loads, they only cost roughly $10. When if you were to get, say, a 223, 20 rounds of 223 for cheap steel ammo, which I prefer not to run steel because as you can see I reload everything, it runs like 50 cents a round on the cheap end, so you're looking at $10 for 20 of them, and you'll go through a lot more rounds that way, and they're not as useful as the 12 gauge overall. That should cover all the topics that I wanted to cover with a first firearm and what I personally think that you should go with. Now there's a lot of differing opinions, and this is only my opinion. This is not backed by science or anything like that. And yeah, if you have any stories on your first firearm or what you think was the best firearm you started with, leave them in the comments and keep shooting. Oh, fucking no.